So I've written about Dworkin in a very serious way for many years, and some of the work Jim is talking about, I've done some similar work on responsibility and persuasion and conformity. So I decided, having shown my good faith seriousness as a scholar, I would have some fun for this conference. So what I did was compare Dworkin's magnificent manuscript with a wonderful novel, The Elegance of the Hedgehog. A very beautiful book. It's translated from the French. It's by Muriel Barbary, and I recommend it to anyone if you have not read it. So, is there anything to comparing this books beyond the fortuity of the similar title? Well, it turns out maybe this somewhat random choice was not quite so random, because this book is described on the back cover by no less than Elle Magazine Italy as a philosophical fable by the New York Times as a book in which the two protagonists create eloquent little essays on time, beauty, and the meaning of life. So sounds like we're more in the ballpark. What intrigued me even more as I began to read the book is that these two protagonists, Renee, a 54-year-old self-described autodidact who is a concierge in a fancy French hotel particular, and Paloma, a 12-year-old girl who lives with her family there, are closet intellectuals who hide their intelligence and talent from the world around them and live a secretive life of the mind. What I thought could be more different than the life of the typical academic, for whom displaying the fruit of his or her intelligence and talent is part of one's job description. And the notion of hiding one's light under a bushel, of deliberately striving to conceal one's nature from others, to persuade others of one's mediocrity, or to confirm their class biases, while secretly scrutinizing others and relishing their foibles and their futile efforts of living well, seemed wholly antithetical to Dworkin's conception of what he called in earlier work the challenge model of ethics, or what he talks about here as a responsibility for living well and living a good life. Indeed, such a life is the polar opposite of the challenge model of ethics, as modeled by Dworkin himself, who relentlessly devotes his talents and intelligence to tackling basic questions of justice and equality and educating the public about pressing legal and political questions, earning the accolade, as Jim told us yesterday, as a leading public intellectual. So such was the genesis of my project. And as I read Barbary's novel in tandem with Dworkin's manuscript, similarities between the books struck me. For example, Justice for Hedgehogs makes frequent allusion to art, literature, music, to illustrate arguments about truth, interpretation, and the like. The Elegance of the Hedgehog is rich in discussion of these same things. Both protagonists discuss art with a capital A at many points in the book. Both books also ponder the significance of human beings' animal nature. What is the relevance of that to truth claims Dworkin asks? So what if we learn something from evolutionary biology? The protagonists of The Elegance of a Hedgehog are constantly reflecting on the extent to which our animal nature lends to a certain determinism or certain basic drives that we deal with. So it's not so out of the ballpark to cast my paper as a work in law and literature, since Dworkin's manuscript itself in some ways is a work in law and literature. Okay, so if Dworkin's book attempts, among other things, to answer the question, how then shall we live? Barbary's book begins with an assertion by both protagonists of the futility of searching for the meaning of life, but ends with glimmerings of how to find meaning and live a meaningful life. Both books take on questions of responsibility. Dworkin's book speaks of a responsibility project of interpretive reasoning. Responsibility is central to his due dignity principles of self-respect and authenticity. And government has certain responsibilities as well. And something that I haven't heard come up yet at this conference, but I thought someone would talk about, moral and political philosophers have a special role to play in Dworkin's world, because they should engage in moral interpretation to construct articulate bodies of value and principle out of widely shared but disparate moral inclinations, reactions, ambitions, and traditions, providing the rest of us with menus of attractive ways to organize our various convictions. Well, Barbary's novel considers both individual responsibility to make something of one's life, what Dworkin might call authenticity, as well as the special responsibility of the elite and well-educated to serve humanity. It indicts, and here's my justice part of the paper, it indicts the social hierarchy that leads a concierge to feel that her impoverished origins determine her low position in the class system, which seems to implicate Dworkin's first dignity principle that it is objectively important that every human life, each human life once begun, go well. Now, to the extent that the concierge Renee's childhood poverty is an example of what Dworkin calls unjust poverty, that cheats people of opportunities and resources they are entitled to have, then justice in this is a concern of the novel because Dworkin argues that, quote, our foundational responsibility to make something valuable of our lives carries rights that others not deprive us of opportunities for success in that enterprise that we would otherwise have, close quote. As I shall elaborate, but I probably won't be able to, these constraining background conditions have narrowed, though not completely determined, Renee's sense of the possible good lives she might live. Now, I want to explain the meaning of the elegance of the hedgehog here because it's quite distinct from the use in Dworkin's manuscript. Here, by contrast to the difference between pluralism and unity, the elegance of the hedgehog refers to a concealed elegance and the unexpected contrast between external appearance and a keen and solitary inner life. Paloma, the 12-year-old, comes to realize that Renee has the elegance of the hedgehog. That she, on the outside, she's covered with quills, a real fortress, but Paloma's gut feeling is that on the inside, Renee has the simple refinement of the hedgehog, a deceptively indolent little creature, fiercely solitary, and terribly elegant. Now, when I went on the internet to search the hedgehog, I did find on National Geographic Kids' website that, in fact, the hedgehog, if attacked, curls into a prickly and unappetizing ball that deters most predators. But it does not, by contrast to the porcupine, actually shoot quills at others. Also, the hedgehog is a solitary creature. And when I went back to Isaiah Berlin's essay, in fact, Berlin in the first paragraph notes that there are many differing interpretations of the famous words by the Greek poet, and that, quote, they may mean no more than the fact that the fox, for all his cunning, is defeated by the hedgehog's one defense, which I guess is the kind of contracting into the little ball or something. So anyway, another interesting parallel between the two books is the subtitle of Berlin's book is an essay on Tolstoy's view of history. And Renee, in the book, adores the work of Tolstoy and even names her cat Leo. So I have 2 minutes to cover 25 pages. So what I wanted to just talk about is 3 quick points. Both protagonist and the elegance of the hedgehog begin the book as skeptics about life's meaning. The 12-year-old is a global internal skeptic. She's going to take her life on her 13th birthday because she has deduced early on that adults tell people a great lie, which is that life has meaning, and she'd rather get rid of herself before she comes to believe it. Happily, by the book's end, she has changed her view. Renee has a certain determinism about her place in the world, but she has carved out for herself an inner life of beauty in which she hides in her loge listening to listening to music and reading, and as she puts it, she has carved out against determinism this meaningful life for herself. By book's end, Paloma has come to believe that there is meaning in life in that one should try to build and construct and to heal others and so forth and so on. And Renee, perhaps reflecting the adverbial value of life, has come to see that what matters is what you're doing at the time of your death. And after many years of believing that all that was open to her because of her class origins was this kind of solitary life of the mind, and she dare not try to mingle and break down through class barriers, she has come to have a new idea of her possibilities because of a transformative friendship with a Japanese tenant who moves into the building. So she has changed her view of what is possible for her and realized that she was wrong about what was possible. And does that mean she had a bad life for 54 years? No, but it meant her sense of possible living well was very constrained by poverty and certain interpretations. And that's my time. And so all I can tell you is there's actually a very interesting mapping between some of Dworkin's key concepts about responsibility and meaning and interpretation and this novel. And so in the published version of my paper, I will make good on demonstrating that to you. Thank you.